What's up guys? Welcome to the full tank update video. Now I got to apologize, I'm a bad YouTuber. I haven't been giving you any updates, and that's kind of important for a home aquarist to see how are my tanks really getting along, right? They look great when you set them up. I might do a 1 week update where I add livestock, but you know, we haven't had a chance for the algae to set in yet. But in this video, I'm going to quickly go through all of my tanks, give you kind of some cliff notes and a video of how it was set up, what it looks like now, any changes to the tank. We got a lot of tanks to get through today, so let's just go ahead and start right now with this tank here, which was the very first tank I ever got. This is a 10-gallon, just run-of-the-mill big box aquarium, you know, comes in a kit. It is running a Hygger 14-watt clip-on light here, and it's also running a Fluval 107 filter on it. This tank has had a number of filters on it, but currently that's what's on it. Stocking, we've got 3 mollies in there, and there are some red ram's horn snail, or pink red ram's horn snail. We'll get to where they came from later in the video. And there are some Sunkiss cherry shrimp in there, or Sunkiss neocaridina shrimps. I don't know, about 15 or so in there. So this is currently known as the low maintenance tank, which was put together around July 2nd of 2023. So at the time of this video, it's 11 weeks old. However, this tank has been in the family for a couple of years. This is a very special tank to me, as my wife bought it for me for I think it was a birthday present, but it could have been Christmas. Sorry, sweetie, I don't remember which one it was. Anyway, this is the very first tank that we had in our house here. Not the first tank I've ever had in my life, but this is the first one that has been in this home. And it's the first time I've ever experimented with live plants. Try and find a couple of clips here to show you. You can see here how it was originally set up a little bit. A couple of plants scattered around, and it was kind of one of the first videos on the channel as well. Now currently, the tank is perfect. I've got no issues with it. As you can see, the plants are looking good. The only thing that's ever kind of happened to this tank here is I've got a little tiny bit of staghorn algae that you see right in the middle of your screen there. Now there was some staghorn kind of hanging out over here, or hanging onto the lace fern in the back, but I plucked it off and I thought it was pretty much all gone, but another little one has popped up here. Now, I've never had staghorn algae before, but not a big deal. If you're gonna have any kind of algae, staghorn's probably the one to go with. Now the mollies do keep the tank pretty clean. You know, mollies will go around and nibble on algae and scrape algae off of plants and stuff, especially hard leaf plants like this Anubias. They're hungry little fish, they're always scavenging. But I did add these little sun-kissed shrimp in here from one of my other tanks, just to get down in these areas where the mollies can't. So say under all of this plant material here, under these Anubias, there's a pocket down here that, well, the mollies aren't gonna go into. So those shrimp, they kind of help clean everything up. But I've really had no issues with this tank here, and I think it's because we started with seasoned substrate. We took all the substrate from the tank that had been set up for a long time, and we just kind of reused it and put other substrate on top. Real quick rundown of the plants in here, just an update. The S. repens here is filled in great. I've never had success with S. repens like I have in this tank. Again, I think it's just a seasoned tank, and so the plants are thriving okay. They are spreading out there. I haven't done any trimming. Well, I take that back. I did do one little trim because I was scavenging some plants out of this tank to put in another tank. But the S. repens is spreading by itself and filling in. As you can maybe see the difference between here and when we started. There's some Anubias barteri, I think it is, right here. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that's the species name on there. And there's also some Anubias Nana Golden, which you can see the roots are draping down around the wood here. And it's just creating a really awesome look for this tank here. Here's another example. When these roots fill in and kind of reach the substrate and go over this piece of wood, it's gonna look fantastic. Other plants that are in here, you've got some Bucephalandra, what is this? Something purple. Brownie purple, that's what it is. Bucephalandra brownie purple, We got that spread out kind of everywhere in the little cracks. It's filling in and taking root, and it's doing pretty good. Everything's doing great. Got a little bit of Java fern lace in this tank. I added in the back, since the build, I've added the Java fern trident just to fill this back in a little bit. And there's more Java fern lace here in the very back corner. Got some Hydrophilia Compacta, really cool plant. It's hard to see on camera, but the leaves kind of have this metallic sheen to them. Really like that plant. Starting to fill in and grow pretty well. And then we've got a little bit of Cryptocoryne nuri around the tank. There's a little piece there. Got another spotch of it right here. And then I guess you could say our feature plant here is a new type of Anubias for me. This is the Hydrophilia, this broadleaf Anubias here. It may kind of outgrow or overgrow the tank. I'm not sure how big it's going to get. It's a cool plant, just maybe not great for a 10-gallon due to the size. But there's your first tank. It's gone through the most iterations, so probably take the most time in this video. Let's go ahead and move on to the next tank. Next up is a 75-gallon largemouth bass tank. You can see old Billy Bass there right up front and center. He does like the attention. We'll get some close-ups of him here in a second. But this bass tank is pretty special as well. It was the second kind of dabbling I did with plants, but really kind of the first aquascape that I ever tried to do. It didn't go well, as you can see by these clips here. This is what the tank looked like when I first kind of started setting it up. Not the best little aquascape in the world, but we moved it to a island setup as it is now and started learning a little more about aquascaping. And so the tank kind of looked like this. And now the tank looks like this. So you can see there's a big difference. It's really filled in here. There's old Billy Bass, our largemouth bass. He started as a fingerling about, I don't know, 2 inches long, something like that. And he's about 9 inches long now. So he's about 1/4 the size of the 75-gallon here. So he's been eating and growing. Now this tank was set up January 11th, so it's like 8 months old now, but this is the third iteration, I guess, of the tank. Really second iteration, but I had a lot of problems with this tank. There's some videos of the clouding problems and the algae problems and all of that, but since the addition of some added plants here, which we're gonna go through really quickly, the tank is really stabilized. The substrate is mature. That's probably due to a lot of billy poo here, and billy poo is great for the plants. Plants are great for stabilizing the tank. Now, what plants do we have in here? Well, let's try and go through it real briefly. We've got some Vallisneria here that is just, well, growing like crazy. You can see it's almost taken over the whole tank. Java fern trident in the front. Narrow leaf, that's a long narrow leaf there. Next to it here, kind of under Billy. Billy, you need to move, buddy. Yeah, they can't see this plant back here, but there's a, let me try and get an up view. There we go. We can look at it up here. That is a marble queen. It's a type of sword plant. You can see that we've got a bunch of runners that are shooting off of here, or shoots, I guess, not runners. Shoots coming off, and plantlets that are trying to make their way into the habitat here. At the base of our piece of wood here, we've got a bunch of Anubias, Barteri, I think again it is. Another little piece of Java fern. Now let's interrupt here. This is a good shot. I've always had a little algae in this tank, and it's always been this kind of hair algae. You can see the little hair algae there. It never gets crazy, but it's just kind of attached to a few little leaves. I will snip them off as I see it get any bigger. There's some, it's mostly on the Java ferns. Java fern, they love to get that hair algae on there. It's never been a huge issue, and from a distance you can't tell. As you see on camera, the tank looks beautiful. What else we got in here? There's some Anubias fraseri, I think it's called, right here. Before we move on, there's our little brim. This brim started as a wee little teeny fish, and now he's about as big as Billy. But Billy does chase him around, so the poor guy, he hides a lot now. But anyway, we've got our fraseri here. This plant, I'm not sure what it is. I did look it up, but I can't remember the name of it. It is not an alternanthera, though I did get it in a batch of alternanthera, and I think whoever gave it to me made a mistake because it was small, and it's hard to tell the difference between this alternanthera and whatever this plant is when they are little and not red. We've got a little bit of cardinal plant here, some more alternanthera, So I've always had moss in this tank here. Just pulled a bunch of this moss off of the wood here. Pulled a lot of it off of the top here because I had a sale on eBay. Shameless plug, if you would like some of the plants out of this tank, help me clear it out. Jump on eBay, SS Aquascapes. I've got them all for sale up there. But the last plant we're going to talk about here, well, second to last plant, we have this lily here, or I guess they call it a lotus. But the lotus plant here, it died out. It was doing great, then it died, had lily pads all the way up to the surface, then it died out. I just moved the bulb, stuck it up front here, and a couple months later it sprouted again, so we're good there. All the green grass that you see here, that is Sagittaria dwarf, or dwarf sag. There is a bit of jungle red Vallisneria back here, but it died out and then now it's coming back. So I don't know, it's kind of going through some phases. And the last plant is this big broadleaf thing here. I'll get a close-up of these leaves. It's hard to see the plant because it is buried in with all the other Sagittaria. But if you know what this plant is for sure, you let me know. I don't know what it is. We'll have another shot of it in the 40-gallon grow tank. And if we open up the cabinet here, well, you're gonna see that I've got some baking soda and citric acid in there. Unscripted, guys, unscripted. But hiding in the shadows there is a Fluval 407. That's what's filtering this tank. Everything is set up on smart switches here. So Wi-Fi smart switches to control when the lights and stuff turn on and off, as well as the CO2. You see we're running a 4-liter system. This is a ZRDR system. You can grab that on Amazon. Links will be in the description for all this equipment. Everything you see in the video will be in the description if you're looking for something. And then I run inline CO2 here with this inline 2 diffuser. For lighting here, we are running 2 Hygger 42 watt, 48 inch lights. They are your standard kind of RGB light here with white. And I had one on there, but it just wasn't enough, and so I added a second one, and that's really when my plants started to explode in growth. And that's gonna do it for the 75-gallon update. It's gonna be time to rescape this pretty soon. Billy here is gonna be getting too large for this tank in probably the next 6 to 8 months. I don't like keeping monster fish where they're half the length of the tank. I think that's just cruel. So we're either gonna have to rehome him, or we're going to do an outdoor pond. Let me know if you want to see an outdoor pond. I'm not quite sure yet if I really want to add one to the property or not, but Billy's going to outgrow the tank, and when he does, him and the brim will move somewhere safe where they can live out the rest of their life, and we will figure out what to do with this tank. We're going to move into the office, the fish rack, and where most of the rest of the tank, well, where all the rest of the tanks are. First one you saw was in the living room, by the way. The 75 gallons actually in our bedroom at the foot of our bed. All the rest of them here are in my office in various cabinets, which you've seen if you're a channel OG and been following from the beginning. You've seen all this get built up. But let's start with the rack here. First up is going to be this tank here, but not because we're going in order. This tank wasn't always here. This is the tank that used to be here. This 5-gallon tank that I've got just laying down here, I'll get to in a future video, but this was the 5-gallon tank that I set up as my third tank, and it was our orange-eyed blue tiger tank. Now you can see how the tank is set up currently here with this peargrass kind of iwagumi thing I got going on, but it didn't always look like that. So here's the first attempt at me doing a real aquascape. This was built for an orange-eyed blue tiger shrimp tank, which was also going to be my very first shrimp. So I was going to do my first aquascape and then mix that with Caridina shrimp and one of the harder species and more fragile species of Caridina shrimp. And that was going to be my first go at an aquascape. Pretty ambitious, huh? So anyway, that aquascape didn't look great and it didn't last very long. So I redid the tank to this one here, which was actually a copied tank from MD Fish Tanks. He did a shrimp cliff, and this was my iteration of that shrimp cliff. Really enjoyed the tank there. But that's when we kind of had some problems. We had a CO2 disaster in that tank. Anyway, ended up gassing that tank and lost almost all of the orange-eyed blue tiger colony. So I have now rescaped it to this tank. And it started with just a little hair grass, kind of sporadically plugged in here and there. And then now you can see that that could have been a bad idea, as you can't even see the granite that this Iwagumi is constructed of. Now, what all is in this tank? Well, not much. We have little teeny tiny baby little blue dream shrimp right there. So there's some little babies sporadically placed there are little babies dotted all over this tank. There's one right there. There's probably some on the filter. Yeah, right there on the filter. And I don't know, the 7 or so adults that are in there, 3 of the females are buried, and they're buried as in carrying eggs, and also buried in the hair grass. They come out every once in a while when I feed them in my little feeding area here. The other thing that is in this tank is some blue snails, blue ram's horn snails. There's one right there. But this is the blue tank, so it's my blue dream and blue ram's horn snail breeding tank. And it is lit by a Hygger 14-watt clip-on light, just like we saw previously. And it is filtered with a True Aqua Nano canister filter. I've done a couple videos on these. You can check it out if you haven't seen them. Just go down the channel list. You won't have to scroll too long to find those. But that's what's on this tank here. And I really haven't had any issues with it, water quality and stuff, since it's been set up with the hair grass. In fact, I've done nothing to it, including no water change. This tank was set up a few weeks ago, maybe 4 or so weeks ago. But I've done nothing to it. Hair grass is growing so fast, I think it takes care of itself. This was also a tank that had seasoned substrate in it. So again, reusing that seasoned substrate, kind of an instant success for your tanks. Now let's move next door here. And this is my first attempt at ever doing an Iwagumi aquascape, and I think it turned out pretty good. I'm still very happy with this tank. My first attempt at working with super glue and gluing rocks together to make the formations that I wanted. And you know, I do still enjoy this tank a lot. I stand here and look at it while I'm feeding the shrimp, and not much has changed since I did this tank. Here's a clip of it when it was just first planted, and you can see that the dwarf baby tears for our carpeting plant, they just would not grow. They didn't die, but they just sat there and they wouldn't grow. Look at it now. I mean, full carpet, fully grown in, well-seasoned tank. In fact, there's probably too much dwarf baby tears. I know that the bottom layer is kind of dying out. As you can see in the front here, it could use a trim for the health of the plants. Now, there's not too much else to say about this tank. We'll quickly go through the plants and the equipment here. Plant-wise, you can see the dwarf baby tears just doing great. I think it just took a while for this tank to get seasoned and have enough shrimp poop, since there hasn't really been any livestock in this. One piece of Anubias Nana Petite in there, and then some Java moss, just because shrimp love Java moss and it's great for breeding them. So on the top of the rocks, I've got some Java moss there, which looks like it could use a trim, but goodness me, trimming Java moss is nobody likes trimming Java moss. Equipment-wise, running another clip-on Hygger 14-watt light. Do love my Hygger lights. They've just never failed me, and they grow plants for a low price, so why not? And then filtering it is another one of the medium-sized True Aqua Nano filters, and it's about due to be cleaned. As you can see, I have the pump on 4 dots high, and we don't have much flow anymore. So I do need to clean that filter. Speaking of flow, you may notice the DIY spin pipe there. This one actually broke, and so I had to temporarily fix it just to keep flow in the tank. It should look like this one coming up over the back with the original kind of gooseneck outflow pipe, but that's what it looks like there. Just a homemade spin pipe. So check that video out on the channel too if you want. Now, I know the video is getting kind of lengthy, but we've got a lot of tanks to get through here, and I'm going to take up more of your time because there's a lot to talk about with this Wallstad. Oh boy, the Wallstad. Where do I begin? Well, let's just start with the equipment on there. It is running an 18-watt, fully programmable Hygger RGB light. And as you see, it's not really a true Wallstad anymore. It's got a filter on it, True Aqua Nano canister filter. And it is the XL size, or the largest one they make. Let's go over plants and stocking. Well, for stocking, you can see we're overstocked. There are well over 100, probably 150 or so guppies in here. We've got some red-pink ram's horn snails in here, and we have red cherry shrimp. There's probably a good 200 cherry shrimp in there too. You can't see them because they are all down in the glossostigma here. So the little teeny tiny babies, like that one right there, they're down in the glossostigma. Where can I find some more? Snails are buried in there, more shrimp buried in there, more snails. There's a lot of livestock in this tank. Now, how did this wallstead come about? Well, let's give you some history on it. This tank was set up on March 28th, so it's about 5 months old right now. It was my first attempt at a dirted tank, and so I decided let's not just go dirted, let's go wallstead as well. It used to not have a filter on it. That was the original plan for the tank, was to go, no filter, true wallstead. And it worked okay for a little bit. You can find videos back down in the channel list there, or the video list, if you really want to watch all the wallstead stuff. But as you can see, this is a guppy breeding tank for me, and I spend all of my time in this tank. It looks okay on camera right now, but the water's still a little cloudy, even with a filter. And that is, well, it's just because there's so much livestock in there. Here's some images of it when I first set the tank up, and I was pretty proud of it, but I missed an important thing, and that was the way that I put the rocks in there. I created a triangle kind of aquascape, or triangle style, triangle composition, whatever you call it, but I just put all the stem plants kind of randomly anywhere. And I went back and I rescaped this tank a couple of weeks after I set it up into this scape here. So you can see here how I set it up in a triangle composition, trimmed all the plants into that triangle composition, and that leads us to where it is right now. It is the same composition, but it is just filled in immensely. I would be one to say it's almost at the end of its lifespan, really. The plants are starting to choke each other out, stuff like that. But moving into the plant list here, you've got some not so hot, not so healthy, I guess, Ludwigia Super Red Mini. That's all in the back corner there. Next to it is some Rotella. Well, if we can get a guppy out of the way here. That's going to be hard to film this tank, guys, with so many guppies in there. But next to it, we have some Rotella Atra right there. Next to that is some green moneywort. That's like this stuff here with the snails on it. Next to it is some sort of golden. I can't remember what it is. That's this one, Nisea. Golden Nisea, or Nisea Golden is right there. And mixed in with it is a little bit of Bacopa. And then a plant that originally died but came back, that's in the corner there. And that is your Cryptococcus balancei, which is, again, hard to film because of all the little fishies in here. But the glossostigma carpet is what I'm most proud of. I know Lush Salty Aquariums, he was a little worried that it wouldn't grow in because there was no CO2 and not real heavy light. But I think the soil made up for it, and it has just grown in thick. Probably due for a trim. So that just brings us to where we are now, and that is an overstock tank that needs to be filtered. I'm actually running into some oxygen level issues here. Now, I've recently done a trim to the plants, and the reason that I hacked them back so bad, they do take in CO2 during the daytime when they have light, and they generate oxygen as they photosynthesize. But they do absorb that oxygen again at night and generate CO2, so they do kind of a reverse respiration at night. And with all of this livestock in here and the plants soaking up all the oxygen, as you see, it's a super heavy plant load in here, the fish would be all at the top, and the shrimp would also be at the top, as well as all the snails up at the top. And that was a big warning sign to me. So filtering the tank was a necessity, and I actually have an air line clamped in the back there, because I turn an air pump on at night just to make sure that all the livestock has as much oxygen as it wants. I've hacked the plants back there, which drastically increased the oxygen levels at night. I could tell immediately there wasn't as much kind of surface gulping, if you will. I was never afraid that any of the livestock was going to die, right? But you could just tell that they were stressed out and they wanted to be at the surface, versus, as you see here, they are cruising around in the middle of the water column because there's enough oxygen right now. So I try and keep the lily pipe at a level where it's agitating the surface gently and we're getting enough flow for that transfer of oxygen into the water. But as a permanent solution to this tank, we're going to need to thin the stocking out. So I either need to transfer everything into a larger tank and just transplant the plants and all the livestock and everything into a larger tank, or I need to start splitting this tank up. I don't have these fish for sale yet. I'm waiting for more colorful males and stuff to populate. I do have a bunch of males, but you need more because that's what people mostly want to buy when they buy guppies or males. But if you need some female guppies, these are primarily black bars is what I'm breeding as far as the guppy strand. But it is your common endler guppy. But if you need some females, let me know. I'm sure we can work something out where I can sell you a couple of females for cheap and you'd be helping the channel. I'm going to start thinking about what we can do to rectify this situation and make this livestock a little happier, because ultimately it's all about the fish, right? All right, we should be able to move along a little quicker through the end of this video here. Up next is the 3-gallon fish bowl. And this thing gave me a lot of problems too. It was put together June 4th, about 2 months ago. And this is the only tank, I think, that's never had a filter on it. I've never cheated. It's never had a filter. I never temporarily filtered it. It's hard to get a filter on a bowl. So it's always just been set up as a no-filter bowl. And it's actually done pretty good. Now, here's how it was set up originally. And I had some serious plant melt going on that you can see in this clip here. And I almost lost everything except the Anubias, which I was never scared of to lose. However, in this clip you can see that there was one little Anubias down in the sand. And I actually made a comment that I've grown a lot of Anubias in sand, and that I think the whole rhizome rotting thing is a myth or BS. Well, I need to say I was wrong, because that one did melt. Now, it could have been the species of Nana Golden, but it did finally melt away. I think it was buried too much in the sand, and maybe there's just a fine balance between how much of that rhizome can be buried in the sand. But I'm man enough to admit I was wrong. Something else I was wrong about is this chai. So I put in this chai, and beautiful, beautiful plant, and actually expensive, and it melted into nothing. And I thought it was the aqua soil. I blamed the aqua soil at first. I had never worked with aqua soil before. It was my first dealing with aqua soil, and I still didn't set it up correctly, because as you see currently, the aqua soil is rolling all over the place, because I think you should use aqua soil as a base more than the actual substrate. Now, you see a lot of YouTubers just pour aqua soil in, they plant directly into it, and that's their substrate. But I have a pretty heavy substrate slope. Well, I did. As aqua soil breaks down, I didn't know that either. It breaks down and collapses there. But my first dealing with aqua soil, and I've learned a lot. I kind of wrote off aqua soil. I didn't think I was going to use it anymore. But I do have more plans for aqua soil. I've figured out how to use it, and it works well when you know how to use it. As you see, the plants are doing great. Now, after I posted that video about the chai melting, one of the viewers, Nizu864, hope I'm saying that right, suggested that I go with a crypt flamingo. And I did go with a crypt flamingo. And thank you very much for the suggestion, because the crypt is doing fantastic. So you can see this crypt here as it's filling in the valley. And this is as I've planted it, yet just a little bigger. So it has taken root immediately. It loves being in kind of the lower light. The only equipment on this tank are these 3 little kind of aquarium hood lights is where it came from. And I just wired them up to a timer, and they're just hot glued to the top of this rack here, or the space where the bowl sits. And I think it looks pretty good. This tank went through kind of a diatom phase here, which you can still see a little bit on the rocks, but the livestock in here takes care of it. As you can see, we have more pink ram's horn snails. They're everywhere. We have our chili rasboras were transplanted into this bowl, which was where they were supposed to be the whole time, but they spent a lot of their life in a small cube, which we'll get to next. Anyway, as far as the plants go here, the original Hydropiper is right here. And that's what I wanted as this carpeting plant. And that's all the bigger that it grew, because that's all that was left. This little piece was left. It is growing a little bit, but it's just not carpeting. So when I did my last maintenance session on the sun-kissed shrimp tank here, I uprooted some of that baby tears. And so instead of throwing it away, I just kind of tossed it in here. I didn't even really stick it down in the soil. I just kind of threw it in there and placed it where it would sink. And it's kind of taken root a little bit. And so we're gonna have a mixed carpet here. I probably will pull the Hydropiper out, Elatine Hydropiper. Anyway, I'll probably pull it out and put it in my grow out tank or something just to populate it for other tanks. And in the back there, we've got the Hydrocaudal species Japan, or what is it, tripitarta, something like that. Everybody said it would come back, and it did. It was down to one little sprig, and it's filled itself back in. The Anubias we never had an issue with. You can see the Nana Golden back there. And then right here in the very front corner of this rock, we have Cryptococcus Peachy Pink. And it hasn't turned pink yet, but it has taken root and it has been growing, and it will eventually kind of spread across the foreground here. So there's your bowl update on the no filter 3-gallon fish bowl. And on my desk here where I do all of your video editing, yes, I have a sound bar as my computer speaker. And yes, there's a sub under the desk. Anyway, little insight into my editing life here. All right, on this desk we have a half-gallon cube. That's 0.5 gallon, not 5 gallon. Here's the palm of my hand for reference. So it's about as big as the palm of your hand. Little tiny guy. Now this micro aquascape here was my first attempt at, well, just that, a micro aquascape. And it didn't work out very well, but it has recovered. It just doesn't quite look the same. And it started out as it was going to be my snail breeding tank for all of these red ram's horn snails that you have been seeing throughout this video. They all started from 10 that I put in this little tiny cube. So they have gone crazy. And now I have pink red ram's horn snails everywhere. But originally I set this tank up on May 23rd. It's about 3 months old. Shows you how quick snails grow. And right now it has an Aquatop Forza PFE1 filter on it, but it did start as a no filter tank for most of its life. You can see we've got some duckweed in there, which fits this tank pretty well. I just pick it up or pick the excess out and throw it away when it gets too full. But it does fit this tank. And we have a Hygger clip-on light that was sponsored by Hygger. It's a little RGB, but if I remember correctly, there's no green. I don't think it'll focus. Yeah, it's just red and blue, no green. But it does okay. Focus again, camera. Come on, there we go. There's a little bit of Monte Carlo in here. And I got confused during some maintenance session, I think, and a tiny sprig of Glossostigma somehow got in this tank, and now the broader leaf plant that you see there, that's Glossostigma, and it's taking over. Looks good though, you know, natural with two different species of plants as the carpeting plants. But the Monte Carlo, it's definitely thick. I don't do carpet maintenance like I should. But it's the primary plant in this tank, aside from a little sprig of Java Fern. It's not doing so hot in there. And 2 sprigs of Anubias Nana Petite, which also aren't doing hot, but they're not dead, so I just leave them in there. They'll come back, I guess. And then the red cherry shrimp and the Wallstads started breeding quite prolifically. And is that the right word? Prolific? Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean. They were breeding like rabbits. And in the process of that, you get some kind of off-color ones, or what do you call them, wild types, or just kind of these clear guys here. So it has become my cherry shrimp culling tank too. So I call that tank the Wallstad anyway, and I put all the non-desirable breeding shrimp in here. And they live their life pretty happy. We do feed this tank every day, and they have a good old time in there. But this tank didn't always look like this. Here's a picture of it when I first planted it. And here it is melted into nothing. And then here it is back to where we are now. So it just goes to show you, don't give up. You know, let these tanks kind of do their thing and nature will find a way. Wasn't that a Jurassic Park quote?
Life finds a way.
We're going to talk about the 40-gallon grow-out tank here next, but I wanted to pause and say thank you if you're still watching the video, because that means you actually support the channel and you're interested in what I'm doing here. So thank you for being a trooper and for being a channel OG. Let's get on to the 40-gallon grow-out tank here. All right, 40-gallon grow-out tank. It is a big box pet store bought Aqueon 40-gallon tank. It is being filtered by a Fluval 307 that is housed in a homemade stand here that needs organizing, but homemade stand, that's on the channel if you want to see that being built. And it is powered by not a Hygger light. Ooh, gonna get in trouble. Now, if you guys didn't know, Hygger is a channel sponsor. Most of the lights I bought before the sponsorship, I wanted to try this light out, and it has kind of a diffuser, which you can't really see very well, but it's not like an RGB. They don't have individual red, green, blue. They are addressable LEDs. I think that's what they're called, right? You tech guys, you let me know. 100% app controlled, and this is by ABestFish. So all one word, ABestFish. Link in description if you want. You can tell it's longer than I really wanted. They make a 36-inch, but it was out of stock, and I wanted to try the light so bad that I bought the 48-inch and just figured I'd let it hang off the end. These stands here, I bought these stands. They are fantastic. I'm gonna put a link in the description as well for these on Amazon. They are fully adjustable up to like 7 inches. It's hard to find a stand that works with these rimmed tanks like this, and this stand works fantastic. It's got a little spot here for the legs, you know, if you have like a regular like this leg style, it'll fit in there, and then it sits down in that channel. Very, very stable, but it also fits your light because there's a little lip right there, see? And your light can't slide around. Love that thing. So 2 different sizes. I'll put the link up there in the description. But this tank has CO2. Obviously, it's a plant grow out tank for sales on eBay and my own website when I get that up and running. So you want CO2 in a plant grow tank because you want to sell beautiful plants to your customers. So this tank has got CO2 on it. It's a little 2 liter. I may need to upgrade this, and if I was going to do a full pressurized CO2 system, I'd do it on this tank just so I don't have to make CO2 all the time, because I do use a lot of CO2 in this. But the CO2 injection back to the filter here is via inline CO2 injection, my favorite way to do CO2. And as you see, it works pretty dang well. All right, now this tank here is technically a Wallstad substrate setup, but it's been filtered pretty much since day one. I'm not really happy with the substrate. It's generating some methane gas, and so if you poke it and an air bubble comes up, well, it smells like rotten eggs. It does hold the plants very well as far as like planting trimmings into the sand. It holds it pretty well. I do want to change it at some point. Now this tank had a string algae problem that broke out about a month ago, and so I got 1 flagfish and 3 Siamese algae eaters. And there's some of the Siamese algae eaters, cute little guys, and example of the flagfish there, which they think I'm going to feed them, because now I do have to feed them. They've cleaned up all the algae. Oh, there he is. There was the first flagfish. I can always tell because he's got amazing red on his fins, and he's the biggest one in the tank. But that was the first one that I got, this little flagfish right here. And now you can see we've got more because he wasn't able to keep up with the algae problem by himself. So I got 6 more flagfish. Now we have 7 of them in there. 2 are females. That's this coloration here. And they're slightly smaller. Those are the females right there on the bottom. But adding those additional flagfish when they don't have anything to eat, as you can see the Siamese algae eater there cleaning up on the plant leaves there. All the flagfish will do the same thing, but flagfish will find a piece of hair algae, put it in their mouth, and then chew on it like a spaghetti noodle. And they do a really good job at cleaning up the hair algae. And as you can see, I don't have any anymore. Now, with these cool fish in here, because the flagfish are really interesting, they're beautiful, and I've actually become quite accustomed to the Siamese algae eaters. They have one heck of a personality, cute little guys. But since I have these cute, cool fish, I want to probably do something with this tank. So I want to scape it. It'll still be a grow out tank, but maybe do like a Dutch style or something where I can separate the species of plants and keep them separated so I know what I have and how much of it, but give this tank a little style. Maybe put a little wood in the background or something. So let me know what you think about that, scaping it to a Dutch style for the 40 gallon. Now I'm not really gonna go through all the plants that are in this tank here because this video is just getting way too long. But here's another example of that plant that I showed you in Billy Bass's 75 gallon. This broadleaf plant right here, I don't know where I got it from. I don't know how it got into my repertoire. And I do enjoy the plant, but I have no idea what it is. You can see here in this example, it gets pink. If it has enough light, it'll kind of get pink. If you know what this plant is, for sure, you let me know. I've seen some similar stuff online, but I can't really nail the identification down. Possibly the way that the veins look on the leaf may be some indicator to kind of help you out. I don't know, but there's a little close up there. Help me out, let me know what this broadleaf plant is that I can't identify. Down here in the tank scrapyard, you remember the 5-gallon there? Well, next to it is the Hygger bowl. This was going to be the blue snail breeding tank, and it worked for a little bit, and I started getting some breeding happening. But as an unfiltered bowl, and being so small, and just no light for this tank, it was just ambient light in the room that was lighting this tank. I tried to put it under here and do some mock-up lighting like you see here. It just never did well. Everything was melting, and so I just tore it down when I built that tank up there, and I just moved all the snails in there. Let's talk about the Dragon Valley tank. Dragon Valley. You all know this tank. Set up July 23rd. It is 1 month old, and it is a subscriber favorite. You guys love this aquascape, and I do too. My best work. If you're new to the channel and you haven't seen this build, it was quite extensive. You know, worth you grabbing a cup of coffee or a snack and sitting down and watching that video. When we set it up, it looked like this. And since then, we had kind of a little algae outbreak about 2 weeks into it. And then it cleared up and it looked fantastic. Since I've stocked it with fish, we now have an algae issue again. My Monte Carlo, while it has filled in and thickened up, it is melting a little bit. So you can see the brown melt, but look at all the algae that just kind of popped out of nowhere. Now I did dose this with liquid fertilizer every weekend, and I don't know if the nutrient level just caught up and the algae bloomed or what, but we definitely have an algae problem. You can see it on the Hydrophilia back there, and the only place that the algae is not growing is on the stem plants. And that's probably because the stem plants grow quick enough to ward off the algae. And I trim these every weekend. You've got the Ludwigia Super Red Mini always growing up to the surface every weekend. And now the Rotala Atra is also making its way to the surface and growing up every weekend. You can see some good healthy growth there. But I'm not going to waste too much more of your time on this tank. Fish-wise, we're doing good. The stocking in there with the Emerald Eye Rasboras, the Green Rasbora, and the neons that are in there, they're doing really well. Shrimp are doing great, of course. They're pretty easy, and the snails are doing great. But I'm just going to kind of let it ride. I'm going to let it do its thing. I'm going to let the algae kind of cycle through and do its lifespan, and we'll kind of see how it goes. If the Monte Carlo does not work out and it all melts away and dies and pollutes the tank and it becomes an algae mess or whatever, I'll pull it all out of there, and I think weeping moss would be a good replacement for it. But that's your update on the Dragon Valley tank, everybody's favorite. Keep it short and simple. We've got algae. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up all the updates on all of the tanks here. But before you click off, let me show you 2 tanks that are going to be coming up in future videos for upcoming builds, because I think one of them you're really going to be interested in. One of the tanks I want to build is going to be this bookshelf style. I think it's a 22-gallon, but I have to confirm when I make the video, you'll see. But this bookshelf aquarium here, I want to do a riverscape in here, and I think that's the piece of wood that I'm going to use. It needs trimmed to get it in the layout that I want, but that's going to be a video coming up. I want to do a self-contained, that means no hoses, no filter that you can see, self-contained riverscape, like a riverbank with immersed growth along the top, coming out the top back there. So river tank, that's coming up. But the one you're going to be interested in, I think, is right below it. We have a UN Systems rimless 7-gallon? Yeah, 7-gallon tall aquarium. So a 7-gallon tall cube here, and that is going to be the subscriber build. So if you watched my last video, I had discussed how I was going to do a 100% subscriber built tank, where you guys got to pick from multiple choice and just kind of built the tank the way you wanted it. So that's going to be coming up in a video. I don't know if it's going to be the next build video or if I'm going to do the river build first, but it's going to be coming up. So I hope you guys are excited. I am. I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with, or choose rather, from the options I have available to me. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, guys, on that note, I'm going to sign off. If you've made it all the way to the end of the video, again, thank you so much for your support. I do appreciate it. And I got to put that final plug in there. If you do want to support the channel, the only way to really do it right now is to buy some plants. So you can help me out by going to eBay, looking up SS Aquascapes, that's the the channel or username or whatever on eBay. You can go to my store and look at the stuff I have available. I got shrimp available, snails available, plants available. So if you need something and you want to help support the channel, that's a great way to do it. And then you get something in return. I think I've got decent prices, so go check it out if you're interested. If you saw anything in this video that you enjoyed and you want some of that in your house from me, that's how you can do it. Thanks again, guys, for the support. It really means a lot for this size channel, and I will catch you guys on the next one.